Welcome to another live stream, Legends. I mean, well, guys, Bitcoin has been going on a little bit of a tumble today. I don't think it's anything too crazy. It's not all that unexpected. I was kind of talking about this in my last stream, and I mean, even just with this little range that we're currently, I mean, a couple people had pointed it out in the chat that, you know, we got a beautiful 4-hour Stuber fib here. But as well, guys, on top of this, there's also the bigger resistance. Even if we would have broke out from this, we still have this whole red box here of resistance, for me personally anyways, based around my Stuber fibs, just because if I pull this bearish one here, this never was invalidated. The 115 is still at around 115k, so until that actually gets invalidated, this bearish setup is still potentially on the table. It does not mean that it has to happen, but it's a very large pattern. It's a very large range. I mean, we've been in it since the end of January. January 20th is when we topped here. And so it's nice to see that we at least did get some sort of a higher high, right? We obviously got a little bit of a swing fail. You guys know before I had actually shorted this move with the retest. And also, like I said, on this smaller range here, I also took the short on that because then we have overlap in resistance, right? Just additional confluence that, hey, we are currently in swing fail territory in that red box there, but it's also lining up with the smaller range 786, 886 there. So I never even got my higher laddered entries. At this point, I've been taking profits along the way since it is moving nicely in my favor, obviously paying myself along the way. We've even hit one Stuber target, right? The 0.5 fib. My next target from here, you guys, I'm still expecting us to go lower. I don't know if we're just going to stop in the middle of the range like this, especially since we did go below the 0.5 fib. I would expect for my next target would be the 214 fib, and that's actually closer to 103k, more so 102.8, but I like to front run my fibs a little bit, so my next target is actually front running 103k by just a little bit. So another reason, and just for those of you who aren't familiar with this, the reasoning for my 214 fib target on these Stuber setups is because it's basically right around the opposite 786, right? It's front running it a little bit, but that's the theory there. So even if we dump from here, you guys, I know it's going to scare a lot of people. Here, I just want to make this purple box here just to outline where that Stuber is when I erase this here. One thing that I want to mention about this is, so if I pull a fib, something like this, I was talking about this in the chat earlier, that there's somewhat of a Stuber fib setup down here if we drop to about 102.5k. Again, I like to front run, so call it, you know, around 103. But basically, the thing with this fib pocket is it's not a perfect Stuber fib setup because we never actually set a higher high here, right? We just set I'm not going to call it a lower high yet just because we haven't actually broken the structure down here. Once that happens, we can confirm that this was a lower high. So yeah, it's looking at it as a lagging indicator, but looking for it actually confirmed. And we don't have that confirmed higher high, something like that. In which case, I would feel very good about a Stuber setup, something like this, right? Then I would consider this a full-on Stuber fib pocket. Right now, we just don't, unfortunately, we don't have that. However, it's not I mean, that doesn't mean that this support can't hold, right? Like, just this is kind of that, like I said, my second target from my swing short there. And I mean, it is support until it's broken. It's just lacking that higher high. So basically, the way I look at that, we're just lacking a little bit of confluence on the momentum side of things. That's where if we add a higher high, that's just showing that, hey, even with a steep correction, just a nice big pullback, at least we have momentum on our side there because we'd have a higher high, but we don't necessarily have that right now. However, what we do have is I would have been looking at this. So this is going to be micro analyzing this uptrend here. So basically here would have been where we took a little pause there and we did end up going higher. So even if we call this right here our micro higher low on the trend, since that broke, we've actually set multiple lower lows, right? So at this point, this was the lower high on the micro trend. And since we broke that, I'm willing to give a little more weight to this bullish fib pull and just a little more credit to this support down here just because we have broke that micro downtrend at least, right? So, I mean, no matter how you look at it, we're just in a range again. which Bitcoin loves to range, right? There would be the top of the range, and this would be the bottom of our range for now. So until I can really pull any new sort of fibs, I need one of those levels to be broken, right? Yeah, we're going to get smaller ranges inside bigger ranges and stuff like that. Who knows how it's going to go, right? But as far as the technicals go right now, this is the range that I'm interested in. And until that breaks, basically my fib pockets don't change either, right? So I have this. Did that change slightly? Let me just pull this down very slightly here. So we're going to have that as my bearish resistance there. And then I am willing to also pull a fib like this, just so I can map out some potential support, just to watch for if we do continue to the downside here, right? Because, I mean, as it stands right now, I see no reason why we don't have to go down to my next target. I mean, obviously we don't have to. Like I said, I've been taking profits along the way either way. But it just, to me, I still am favoring the short side of things. As long as we're at macro resistance, I'm still looking for those shorts on Bitcoin. Honestly, I feel different about the altcoin market. I've been saying this for the last few weeks, actually maybe even a month or two. I've actually been significantly more bullish on altcoins than I have with Bitcoin, just because Bitcoin did make it up to macro resistance. So, you know, I'd always rather be cautious or a seller, if anything, at resistance, just like I'd rather be cautious or a buyer at support rather than shorting into it. Whereas a lot of the altcoins have not ended up hitting their macro resistance yet. And then we just have some like hype. I mean, just absolutely on a moon mission. I've been holding this spot since below 20K, but I haven't really been trading it much, just kind of holding it from back there. But now I'm kind of watching it more on shorter time frames, just because, again, for as far as my trades with Bitcoin, I'm favoring the short side. But anything bullish related, I'm looking at altcoins, because realistically, even if Bitcoin has topped, I don't know if it has or not, but if it has, I still expect a finale run from altcoins. And if Bitcoin does go parabolic, then even better for altcoins, right? At that point, there's more money flowing into the market and alts want to keep pumping, then fantastic. I also want to bring up, I know I mentioned it in the pro signals the other day, the Bitcoin dominance. Let's see, it might not have been on this chart, or was it? Yes, it was. So even on the Bitcoin dominance, I was warning about this for a week or two, that basically we broke some serious structure, right? No matter how you look at it. I mean, the very, very micro structure was broken here, but even if you wanted to look at it there, here, I mean, it broke a ton of levels very quickly to the downside there. So when we got that bounce, that's where, once again, just like any Stuber setup, and I mean, I'm not looking at any trades specifically based on this other than the health of the market and the health of altcoins, but I was really expecting that, you know, when Bitcoin dominance gets to that Stuber fib pocket, I would expect a bit of a rejection, just like I would with any other 5-minute, 4-hour, whatever time frame setup I look at with Bitcoin, just treating it the same, right? I'm just treating structure for what it is. But at this point, we're going to have to see, right? If Bitcoin dominance starts trending to the upside again, we smash through this resistance box, we set a new higher high, and we can actually get some sort of a support resist flip. I mean, yeah, then all eyes are obviously on Bitcoin at that point. But so far, I mean, we're seeing a bit of rejection. Even if we want to look at the shorter time frame here, we could say that we lost some structure here on even just this micro trend, right? Just this little pump here, we obviously lost that structure there. So at that point, if the bears are going to remain in full control, I say the bears, it's actually good for the majority of the market if this crashes, altcoins at least. But I would expect selling, or let's just call it a rejection. I would expect a rejection coming into play, possibly even a little bit lower than the last one, right? I'm just going to make my Stuber fib box something like that. So that could be in the cards as well, that we just see this climb a little bit higher before getting nuked once again. Does that have to happen? Absolutely not. The thing is, if this was a Stuber fib setup, I was actually trading on like Bitcoin or an altcoin, for example, the fact that we got that Stuber fib rejection, and I'm saying that's the first target hit. Like I said, I always front run my fib targets a little bit anyways, but yeah, that obviously has played out. I would still like to see it, get the second target. That would give altcoins a nice big push once again. But as it stands right now, I mean, we're going to have to see what happens. But I would love to see the Bitcoin dominance keep dropping. And, just giving altcoins that time to kind of recover, because altcoins have been, I mean, it's no secret. Altcoins have had a rough cycle this year. Whether that's, a lot of things have happened, right? I mean, the meme coin market and how many different coins are being printed every single week and stuff like that. I mean, the altcoin market is just so diluted with trash that you actually have to pick good ones now, or ones that are actually going to have some sort of a community or something to it. Whereas previous market cycles, it almost felt like you could just buy anything and hold it and you would do good. Whereas this time there's so many rug pulls, there's so many scams, there's so much trash out there being printed on the daily. So just something to be considering with altcoins there is, I mean, a lot of people have said at the start of this cycle's going to be different, and I strongly believe that it has been and will continue to be different, but I think that's for a different reason than what most people were thinking, or at least hoping so. I think that the altcoin market is significantly different this time. But that being said, like I said, with Bitcoin dominance getting rejected there's so many altcoins, and I'm going to get into this a little bit later, but even specifically micro caps have been going nuts. I'm sure a lot of you guys have heard about Aura. I don't want to talk about that because I sold all my Aura about 2 months ago, and it did 100x overnight the other night. So we're just going to pretend that doesn't exist. But there's a lot of micro caps that have broken some very tightly coiled structure with low market caps, and they're starting to change their trend. And like I said, if Bitcoin's going to take a time out or cool off or go parabolic, really, I just think altcoins are in a good position right now. So obviously, when Bitcoin's actually getting hammered down, a lot of them follow Bitcoin. But when Bitcoin becomes stable or shows any sign of a bounce or anything, I mean, in my opinion, that's where you start looking for those bullish stubers on altcoins and things like that at this point. That's more so what I'm interested in longing at this point. I don't really care what Bitcoin's doing right now, to be honest, other than, like I said, I'm shorting Bitcoin still. But that doesn't mean I'm necessarily bearish on the whole market at this point. It just means I think at this point of the cycle, or just more so that while Bitcoin makes up its mind and is chilling at resistance, I would rather be looking for those shorts as a hedge against the rest of the portfolio, and looking for those bullish altcoins and meme coins and stuff, just because some of the gains are just crazy on them. Like I was talking about Ass Token quite a lot recently. I'm up, my position is up about 20x on this already. The price is actually only up like 12 or 13x, but I've been spot trading it a little bit. It's up about 12x from when I bought back in February. But yeah, like I said, I've been spot trading some of these for a while now, just because they're so volatile and they have nice structure, right? We're setting higher highs. We just had these tight rounding bottom, tight consolidations, flipping that, the resistance of this tight consolidation into support and that sort of thing, and just absolutely blast it off. And even now it just looks like it's building support for the last month or two, and just looks to me like it wants to staircase higher. It also looks to me like the MDX Trendmaster indicator on the daily really wants to print a buy signal. We've been holding this buy trend now for, since when? Since basically the beginning of April. So we've been holding that as support quite nicely. So even we can pull back a little bit. These things are very volatile, but so many micro caps like this. I think this is only like a $3 million market cap at this point. I think when I bought it was like a 200K. Even though it's done a 10x already, I mean, obviously not financial advice. These things are very high risk. I want to make that very clear right now. Meme coins, very high risk. Anything with low cap, very high risk. Especially if there's low volume. If you're going to do market buys with size of any kind, I mean, you have to be careful with that kind of thing, because you might cause a whole bunch of slippage on yourself as well. So, I mean, when I'm looking at these, I'm looking at laddering in smaller positions and stuff like that. So, but this is just meant to be an example of how a lot of micro caps look right now, just breaking out of some tight consolidation and looking to staircase higher. Some of the indicators are showing that they're ready to take off and stuff like that. We're seeing random ones taking off overnight and that sort of stuff. So yeah, guys, like I think the next few months for the market could be quite interesting. It could be fun. I'm very curious to see what happens, honestly, because like at the end of the day, you guys, all we can do is take our best guess, and we can just play the chart one trade at a time, basically. Well, that's not true. You can have multiple trades at a time, but you know what I mean. You're looking at one setup at a time, right? Because I mean, anything can shift fundamentally or over the macro or whatever. And I'm not interested in, following that sort of stuff all that much. I would much rather just look at the colorful charts and chill and, notice patterns and just looking at chart structure. It seems so much more relaxing to me. So many people trying to get an edge by thinking that they understand the entire global economy more than they understand a couple colorful lines. It's just ridiculous to me. So I don't even entertain the idea of looking into fundamentals all that much unless it's like, okay, the chart agrees with those fundamentals, then that's a different story, right? But, just expecting somebody to release a tweet or expecting some sort of an announcement, I mean, that's not how we trade, right? Investing, sure. As far as investing goes, yeah, playing the fundamentals, sure. I only know one person in my life who actually trades fundamentals well, and he outtrades me. And, he's the only one that I know that actually does that, because he is more so trading a weekly time frame rather than, what I'm looking at a 5-minute. And a lot of people who are trying to trade fundamentals are looking at 5-minute charts and shit like that. I mean, that's good luck, right? If you think you have insider information before the people actually making the moves, then you're going to have a bad time, right? So yeah, basically sticking to structure. That's why backtesting is so important, right? As far as me, a lot of people have mentioned like that I keep a very level head, even though we're going to all-time highs and shit like that. I'm just trying to stay really level-headed. One reason is because I've used this replay feature on TradingView so much. And a perfect example is this exact setup, which is another reason why I think that Bitcoin can easily go down significantly lower at this point, is because every time we get this bearish setup on the RSI, a very specific overextended divergence down to the 70 level with some sort of double top territory, double top sort of formation, it tends to be large moves. Same with the other side, right? I mean, on the bullish side, we got that bullish overextended divergence and boom, a 600% move to the upside. But even on the downside, even the small ones, we've typically got 30% corrections. And this time, so far, we only have a 10% correction. And just kind of look at how this weekly chart is forming right now. Is I've had this red box here for quite some time now. I think that, if I'm not mistaken, that's probably my 115 box. Yeah, it is. So that's my swing fail box, basically. And just notice that when we got there with that divergence, and even right now with the retest with this pump we just had, guys, as soon as we ended up hitting this purple box up here, I talk about this in pretty much all my streams. Whenever you see structure break to the downside like this, and you get a recovery right up to that Stuber fib, as soon as you hit that 786, you will start seeing tweets and shit like that saying the bottom is in, that was a bear trap, blah, blah, blah. Everyone starts celebrating right at resistance, just like everyone starts posting the panic down at support. So, and this time was no different. Even some traders that I respect a lot, as soon as we ended up hitting this pocket, were starting to say things about how, how you guys were all panicking, blah, 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 and now we're going back to all-time highs and stuff like that. But those announcements are coming out right at macro resistance. And to have that lining up with something like this, I mean, to me, it's early to be celebrating. I'm not saying that we can't break this resistance, but so far with this exact trade setup only moving down about 10% at this point, when every other time I can find it on the chart, 30% is generally a small one. You know, I still have my concerns, and that's why I'm still moving cautiously and more so looking for shorts on Bitcoin. It's not necessarily going to crash, but I would rather be looking for those bearish setups for that reason at this point. Like I said, altcoin market, I feel different about. I just have my concerns about this. And if we break out and I have to buy back some of my spot at a 5% loss, because I sold some at 110K, and actually a lot of it went into things like hype and Ethereum and even a couple memers. So I kind of moved some of that Bitcoin around. So really, I do not regret a thing about taking out some Bitcoin at 110K, because if we end up going to those much lower prices, even if we don't, I just don't care at this point. I can always switch back into Bitcoin if the Bitcoin dominance starts breaking out and it starts climbing again, and the focus is obviously on the king once again. Then I'll take my profits out of those other coins and I'll throw them back into Bitcoin, and then whatever. I really have no regrets about that. So, yeah, so the weekly, still not looking great, guys. I mean, yes, down here when we were around 89K, so this is where we had the micro structure, and I've pointed it out on the 4 hour and stuff too, but we can actually see it on the weekly as well. We had that low, slightly lower low, and that same 88, 89K level is the lower high on the weekly there. But at that point, with breaking that micro trend, then you just look for, well, where did the swing start? And that's why I had this fib pull here. That's why I have this swing fail box up here, et cetera, right? So the 4 hour, let's bring up a couple indicators. One, I wanted to look at liquidations. There's starting to be a lot more liquidation levels to the downside with high leverage anyways. There's a little bit above us. So, I mean, yeah, we could still shoot up, sure. But just, again, looking at this as, does it make sense to go to the downside? Well, yeah, there's some liquidity down there, right? The liquidation's banned. We tried to get above it. We're losing it again. We did even flip it to resistance here. We'll have to see if that holds. But again, it's just a little more confluence favoring the bears a little bit there, in my opinion. Volume delta, that. Oh, we even lost that one. The volume delta point of control. You can see we also flipped that into resistance there. Not a good look for Bitcoin. ALGO Master literally printed the same auto fib pocket, right? I know a lot of you guys probably use the ALGO Master indicator for the auto Stuber fibs, but that's, again, just great additional confluence, right? Because I had this mapped out and the auto fibs line up with it perfectly. So I love to see that as additional confluence, just giving me more confidence in that short that I ended up taking there. Trend master indicator, we do still have a buy signal here, and it is a significantly higher buy signal. I will acknowledge that generally speaking, that's a nice sign for the market. But that being said, support for that, I would say, is down around 104K. That's kind of where we can see this indicator trying to flip to support down here, or basically an invalidation level, but sometimes it just kind of uses that as support. So that might front run that 786 fib pocket down here a little bit. So if we start getting tongue tied here, if we start forming support around 104K, at that point, I would also consider looking at some sort of a hedge long. If not, I'm more so waiting for this pocket down here. Let me catch up on the chat a little bit before I get too far ahead of myself. Make sure you guys can still hear me and all that sort of good stuff. How are you guys all feeling this fine evening? Hopefully we're all positive vibing here. I believe we are. Hopefully I haven't triggered anyone with my bear porn yet. Control F Trader StewTube and Pro Signals whenever I short and take a deep breath while reading his posts. Yeah. Good vibes only. Quant spam. Perfect. Yeah, so Bitcoin right now, I was actually wondering if we were going to find support because we had higher trending buy signals. Actually, you know what, that even as far as the 5-minute goes, I mean, that higher buy signal as we came back closer, I mean, it did get a nice little run, right? It's not a huge move, but you got to remember to play whatever time frame you're playing, and I would say that was a successful signal there. Even if you were just chasing the basic market structure, right? If you got in here, for example, and then you end up going higher, right? Then you have your higher low. And then here, got above this, so then we can move our higher low. Up here, we got another one. Actually, here, let me change the colors here just so it's easier to see. But then we got this higher low here, right? As we go higher, then we had a higher low there. So if you were chasing this indicator with a stop loss kind of a thing, then obviously you could have got into a position somewhere down here. And even if you just had a trailing stop loss, a manual one, you could have, you know, exited there and it would have been profitable using that simple strategy with the indicator basically. So after that, we got our higher sell signal. I honestly would have expected, you know, if the bulls were going to remain in control, you would expect to see a higher buy signal, but it obviously never happened. We broke structure to the downside. We're holding this sell signal as resistance so far. And again, it's just coming off a big, beautiful, perfect, I mean, literally picture perfect example, textbook right here. Look how perfectly that ended up filling that pocket. It just does not get any better than that. And it's not, well, maybe it's magic. I don't know. But it's nothing crazy, you guys. That's just a typical Fibonacci strategy setup, right? They're not going to work every time. That's trading. You weigh out your odds, and I like to ladder into positions. I never had one on the 886, or I would have pulled my entry up a little bit. I was looking for the double top swing fail area with my bigger entries. So unfortunately, I just got my one just above the 786. But it is what it is. It's a thing of beauty when you see just how accurate that chart structure gets respected, right? And that's why I look at these on the 4-hour, the 5-minute, the 1-minute, the daily, the weekly, right? And there's so many times, not so much in here, you guys, but like when I do my public live streams, a lot of people just straight up will look at me talking about sewer fibs and be like, this guy has no idea what he's talking about, and then just leave. And they do that without having any experience as looking into it, as if that they, from looking at my strategy for 10 seconds, they understand it better than me, who has spent over a year fine-tuning it and stuff like that. And you can just see how many people won't believe what you're talking about based on market structure unless they agree with it. Because the thing is, and I say this all the time, you guys, is we could have the exact same charts, we could have the same trend lines, the same fibs, the same indicators, absolutely everything the same, but we can trade completely different. I promise you we would trade completely different, right? Other than, you know, maybe there's a select few of us who trade basically the same because we have for a while been looking at the same types of setups and that sort of stuff. But you know, it's just one of those things that just because someone else has a different strategy, like for example, I was talking about using the replay feature earlier. It's something everyone should do, because just because this strategy works for me doesn't mean that it's going to work for everybody, because everybody sees things differently, right? And if you're looking at structure slightly different and pulling your fibs slightly different because of the way you look at structure, then you need to find a strategy that you yourself are able to pick up, right? That's all it really comes down to. Everyone sees things differently. So yeah, basically I just like to take one trade setup at a time. If this is the Fibonacci I pull, that means that's the range I'm playing, right? So I have my entries, I have my take profits, and from there we just basically see what happens. We have our invalidations. Because like I said, not every no trade strategy is going to be absolutely flawless. You're always going to lose some trades, and that's why it's important to have some sort of systematic trade setup where you can repeat and actually have, you know, reasoning for your invalidations and stuff like that, rather than just, you know, if you're trying to trade on a gut feeling, especially when emotions are high like right now. I mean, trying to trade on a gut feeling is just, it's not going to be fun, right? Whereas if you go into it with some sort of strategy like that, it takes the emotions right out of it, because it's either going to work or it's not going to. There's no second guessing about it. This is just how I'm going to trade it. These are the levels, and either it's going to work or it's not. That's all there is to it. Let's go to hype here. I want to take a look at hype, you guys. Like I said, it's on an absolute moon mission. Zeus, if you're still in here, I know you were talking about it quite early. No, you're not in here anymore, but basically put it on my radar early. And yeah, I mean, this is and Adrian also, I know you trade this one a lot and stuff like that, so I've been looking at it a little bit more, and I actually did take a little bit of long. I'm actually curious if I'm still in it. I took it right before starting this stream, basically. Oh yeah, we're still in it. So same thing, right, guys, is this trade setup may not play out in my favor, but basically I have this Stuber fib setup. So I took an entry when I saw we were around the 886. We had this low, we have a lower low. This was our lower high. We obviously broke it. So at that point, pulling a fib to wherever the market tops out and looking for that pullback. Another thing, just looking for confluence using the trend master, is this is one thing I also like to mention quite often, is we have that higher sell signal, right? So at this point, what I would love to see right now from the indicator for a little additional confluence here is to see the price get back above this selling signal resistance, because let's face it, there is some potential resistance right here from this indicator. But being we have the higher sell signal and we have this bullish Stuber fib setup, I'm hoping to see the price get back above that, print a higher buy signal, and then carry on a trend. I mean, that would be absolutely beautiful to see. But as it stands right now, I mean, I have another laddered entry down here closer to my invalidation to help pull my average entry down if I'm going to get stopped out. That's why I only put half my entry in at first on the 886 here. And if I hit my other entry before getting stopped out, or if I hit that entry and get stopped out, whatever, my average entry is going to be somewhere around double bottom territory. Super tight stop loss, right? It would be basically my average entry will be somewhere around there if that happens. And I'd be looking for basically a 4-to-1 risk reward if that happens. If we hit my first target, I'll obviously be downsizing my position, taking a little profits. And at that point, if we hit my first target, I will obviously be canceling my laddered entries, my additional entries. I'll just be, at that point, basically riding out that position and see what happens. But gonna have to see what happens with that. So far, it's trying to hold some sort of support, looking like a perfect double bottom. I really was expecting some sort of a liquidity grab when it never just found support right in the fib target, or fib pocket rather. So it was lacking the strength. The bulls are lacking the strength on this move to set an actual higher low, right? If they would have done something like that, that would have showed a little bit of strength, in my opinion. The fact that we came right down to double bottom, I'm really kind of expecting some sort of a liquidity grab at that point. Doesn't have to. We could just get a perfect double bottom, obviously. What's the RSI looking like? That's another thing. Nice overextended bullish divergence on the RSI. Like I was showing on the weekly chart. I love to see that. So to see that on the 5-minute as well, you know, it's a little additional confluence for me there. What's the... Oh, different chart, different ALGO master. So I don't have the auto fibs on this one. Volume delta, well, that's up close to the Stuber fib target, right? So again, it might get front run a little bit, but again, I would expect the price to kind of be drawn towards that point of control at some point. AI charting tools, we also have some resistance here, right, where the indicator also has resistance, but you can see we do have a lot of support below us. That's one thing that hype has going for it, is it's been building beautiful support on this beautiful uptrend that it's been on. Adrian is more on the 4-hour now and wait for $34-ish for a massive long on hype. Yeah, you know, that's one thing I was considering, is the 4-hour on hype. I was looking at that earlier. Let me just clean this up. 4 hour. 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 4 go to the 4-hour. So there was actually a beautiful bearish Stuber there. I never took it. I'm kind of hesitant to short hype because it's like a freight train right now. But technically, with this very tight microstructure here, this would have been our high, and we obviously set a higher high. That means the higher low between the two would be there, and we obviously broke it. I know a lot of people think, well, that's ridiculous structure right there. That's not proper, whatever you want to say. It is what it is. It played out, right? That's how I like looking at structure. I do microanalyze structure. I like scalping and looking for these early reversal signs, and just look how beautiful that was, right? Boom, first target, second target, hell, even a third one if you wanted to take one at double bottom territory, right? So I wouldn't really want to short this anymore at this point because it may have played out already. But I do see what you're talking about, that we could go significantly lower. Based on that, you said 34 approximately. So I'm actually tempted to go a little bit lower. I would actually pull a fib from somewhere in here. Yeah, it's very close though, right? My fib would start around $33.50. You're more so looking at these order blocks or somewhere in here, I'm guessing. Yeah, you're going to front run me. I won't get my longs down there. I don't have any set down there, but yeah, I'd definitely be open to the idea. But I assume you're talking about this sort of block. $34 to $28. Yeah. Yeah, I can see your reasoning with that. And I would agree with that. That would give you that nice wiggle room, right? That would be a little past the 115. So I agree with that setup 100%. Just going to map this out just so I don't forget about it, because I am going to erase all these lines here. And I am going to well, I'm just going to exit this chart and go back to this one. Yeah, what's Bitcoin doing still? Yeah, I really see no reason why Bitcoin would have to stop but before 103K. Doesn't mean that we'll get it. Like I said, sometimes these fibs get front run, right? But that's kind of the target that I'm looking for just from this setup. I mean, look how perfect the rejection played out. So far, we've hit that first target. So yeah, that's my next target there. If we zoom out even further, so that means that target's around 103K. My next targets, you guys, would be 93K and then 82K. And before you tell me that that's ridiculous and that can't happen and all those other things that I like to hear in my public streams, that would just be, if this bearish Stuber is still in play, that would just be those targets, right? This bearish Stuber was never invalidated. We had about $4,000 to go, or a little over $3,000 to the upside of wiggle room yet. And if this plays out, I mean, the targets from this are down here at the 0.5 fib, which is about 92.4K. So I'm going to call it 93. And the next one below that would be around 82.2K. So calling that 83K. You know, not saying we have to go to those levels, but just understand that the market maker does not give a shit what we think or what our emotions feel. They will do what they want to do. And if we start losing some of these support levels, we lose some important levels, then it absolutely makes sense. I see no reason why we wouldn't eventually test 93K, to be honest. I really have a feeling that we will see it. I don't know if it's going to be right away, right? We might get this bounce, and as soon as we get 1 or 2 hours of green candles, you'll see the influencers saying, the bottom's in, all-time highs. And then up here, they'll really start celebrating right at resistance. And then we see one of those. I would not be too surprised to see that at all, to be honest. That's actually the most logical thing that I can think of right now. Would be see the price set a lower low, something like that. and then we see a new bearish Stuber, something like that, come into play. Very open to that idea. Doesn't mean it's going to happen, but just if the setups show up, then at least we're ready for them, right? I'm going to put the house on it at 34 then, and don't fucking rug pull me. I'm not exit liquidity. Yeah, I don't know if I would, I don't know if a coin like that I'd be able to move the price myself, but that's a little different than a micro cap with next to no volume, right? Those low volume ones, they always, well, they can just move a lot, right? Good stuff. We are continuing to drop a little bit. Let me zoom right back in. Why am I on a 4 hour here, you guys? Let's get back into the 5 minute. I have not looked at comp. I will check it out very shortly here. Sorry, just kind of babysitting Bitcoin and hype a little bit. All right, comp, you say. I assume this is its oldest chart. Interesting. Let me just I'm going to start way zoomed out. Let me know what time frame you prefer to look at, but I will also start zoomed out and just work my way in to get a better feel for it overall. This structure, to me, it's actually pretty nice. So here is obviously the last low we had, right? That is basically as low as we got. And so at that point on this downtrend, we did actually have a slightly low there and lower low there. So we eventually broke that lower high. And then actually notice what happens after that. If you pull a fib from our low here to that high when we broke it, notice where we end up finding support, right? Right in that 786, 886 fib pocket. Then from there, we end up setting another higher high, right? So if we pull a fib, something like that, played out again. If you would have bought in the Stuber fib, it would have played out beautifully there. Since then, we've set another higher high. So we look something like this, and notice where we're trading right now, right in that fib pocket. So obviously it depends what the whole market's going to do, and I know nothing about this project, right? So fundamentally, I have no idea what's going on, no idea what it's all about. But as far as basic market structure, it's at support, right? And it looks like it's holding support well. There must be market makers around this level or whatever, but it doesn't look so bad to me. Some of the indicators might not. Yeah, so we have a couple support boxes forming here. So notice that there is this there's this supply zone up here, but we have had these demand zones printing to the upside since that. So there's actually pressure building to the upside with this indicator there. Trendmaster, was that a higher? That's basically a double top sell signal. I can't really get a good read on that indicator with that. I assume it looks like we want to break that sell signal, in which case if we get a higher buy signal on the weekly, that would be a massive signal in my opinion. Let's hop over to the daily. Daily, basically a double bottom buy signal. Same thing, notice the structure is the exact same. Have that fib pull there, pull back to basically double bottom perfectly. So we might see some sort of a pullback here, but again, it doesn't look so bad. I guess that's a pretty big range, right? Understand that just because we're at support is also down the next 30 or 40% here. So it's a very large range, so don't be surprised if it gets volatile. I have no idea what the market cap is, anything like that. But just understand that this is a volatile one, right? 4 hour. Just gonna work my way in here. What can I find here? We do. So here's where I mentioned, like, we get the higher buy signal, buying off that buy trend after a higher buy signal. Absolutely beautiful little, I'm going to call it a scalp. It's on the 4 hour, but that's just one way I love using that, guys, right? I've mentioned many times the MDX Trendmaster is actually my favorite indicator. Just the way I use it. It's not that I take every signal as, you know, concrete evidence that something's going to happen. However, when you notice which way those signals are trending, for example, a higher sell signal followed by a higher buy signal, it's often a strong warning that, hey, things are trending to the upside. Pay attention to support, basically, right? So even where it's coming down to right now, it's getting very close to a support level. I wouldn't be surprised to see it react off that, just because, you know, we obviously broke, I'm going to say, the sell signal where we pivoted for that guy was up here. We've obviously broken above that, right? Even after setting a little higher, notice we got that beautiful little resists SR flip, right? We had some pretty good resistance right here, and we flipped it into support, and now we carry on higher. So I think across many time frames, that doesn't look so bad to me. Sorry, I got to go back up and see if you mentioned a time frame that you prefer to look at. Had a short at 66 and exited, but it was a runner. Yeah, you know what? I don't know if I would necessarily want to be in a short on this anymore. I'm at 80 rug, 20 tug. No, you got that backwards. I aim to please. Doge. Yeah, Maz. I will look at Doge, and I'm going to do it before I forget again. Ooh, it is, it's having a hard time. It is technically in support. Yeah, actually, you know what? That's not too shocking to see. So we do have that higher buy signal print, so I don't really want to see us lose this support here. But you know what? We could even call it this one back here, just for a little extra wiggle room. Oh boy, let me just delete a few things here real quick. Yeah, what do we got here? I just want to make this a little cleaner. Let's go with right there as backup support. But even from right here, you guys, so here's another one of those cases where, so you saw the fib pull that I had. It's very possible that we should have it pulled from the bottom of the swing, something like this. So maybe we are coming down to these levels yet. So if we're going to retrace most of the swing, I would still expect us to come back down to these levels. So basically 0.158 down towards 0.145, somewhere in there. Wouldn't be too surprised. But the reason why I had my fib pulled a little bit differently is because I had it pulled from the higher buy signal. Because again, I don't really want to lose that trend of higher trending buy signals. And that was the last pivot point there around 16.48 cents, we'll call it. So if I do something like that, that's why I had that fib there. But even on this micro trend here, the reason why this is a level of interest for me is because on the micro trend, right, from where we topped, where we lost our, see, even this, right, we can see a beautiful Stuber fib here. This was our high. This was a higher high. Here's our higher low. This red guy here, we broke that. Notice what ends up happening eventually is we get that perfect 886. Boom, there you go. Perfect swing trade there. But going back to before I got sidetracked on that, since we formed this downtrend here, we had our previous low was here, and this is our next lowest low, or this was our low, lower low. That means this is our lower high on the micro trend. And we've obviously broken that as well, right? So even if this is an early warning sign that, hey, we broke that micro downtrend, just like any trade setup, I like to see those pullbacks. So I don't think the bulls are a write-off yet at this point. I wouldn't be surprised to see something like that, where we pull back just a little bit lower since we broke the highs. What often happens after you break structure, you get some sort of retracement. That's literally the whole premises behind the Stuber fibs, right? It's not that it's some magical sequence or anything like that. It's basically the point of the Stuber fibs are to have a systematic way of looking at things, so that rather than FOMOing into breakouts and buying the absolute high and then pulling back, you're looking for those setups where you have a structure break and then you get a proper deep pullback, right? And that's why I prefer the 786, 886, because that's the majority of the move. You're actually retesting most of that swing or most of that range before taking off higher. You don't always get it, but if this was a typical 5-minute setup, this is kind of where I'd be looking at longing. So yeah, I think that Doge is in a okay spot right there. Obviously, if that breaks, then there's still potential support. Like I mentioned, you could pull from the actual lows back here of the bigger trend. And at that point, we have more support. So unfortunately, when you start doing that, it turns into a much bigger range, and then you're constantly trying to long in something like that. But it's just one of those things that, yeah, if you're looking at playing the immediate uptrend, I'd be looking at support around this level here. If that ends up dropping, it doesn't necessarily mean to start shorting. It just means that we're going to be testing lower support before anything. I see what you did there, but those are too many weeks to move to move the price very little, and not compounding very nicely on compound there. Yeah, that was, I mean, those ranges were bigger than they looked, is the thing. Smallio, silly Smallio, killing the BTC chat. What have you done? Alts are all tug, no happiness at the moment. Yeah, a lot of alts are pulling back again today, but most of them not looking too bad. I want to look at Ethereum. I know I don't typically look at Ethereum all that much, but lately I've been trading it a little bit, and it's been catching my eye a little bit more. Let me zoom out a little bit. I am not in this position anymore. So basically what I was saying earlier in the stream, I was mentioning that the reason I'm bearish on Bitcoin but not as bearish on altcoins is because altcoins are not at their macro resistance yet, whereas Bitcoin is. So in a case like this, I mean, it doesn't mean that we have to get it, but as it stands, I would expect at this point to at least retest this resistance up here. And Ethereum is obviously a far ways away from that right now. I mean, how big of a move is that? That's a 34% move just to the start of that resistance, right? Doesn't mean we have to get there. But even how Ethereum is pulling back right now, it doesn't look bad to me. Let's just take another look, something that's catching my eye right now. Just looking at this as some sort of a bull flag. If we take that measured move from here, from breaking out basically, notice that it lands right in that pocket. So I know not everyone's into measured moves and playing patterns and stuff like that, but just the fact that it's additional confluence lining up with a proper Fibonacci level. On top of that, we've obviously broke above this range. So between our high and our higher high, even if we pull back, we could look at something like this. And we might just be pulling back to this level here, call it 2490 down to 2440. I would like to see the bulls step in there. Basically, if the bulls are going to remain in control on this trend, I would like to see them step in somewhere in that pocket. It's still possible to drop a little bit more, obviously, if we get some sort of a swing fail and reclaiming the range, something like that. You know, at that point that, yeah, hey, we have a different kind of a long setup, whatever, right? There's many different types of longs to take. But so far, basically, moral of the story, Ethereum doesn't look too bad to me. I know not a ton of people in here like trend lines. Some people do. That's another thing we could start looking for, right? I don't blindly set orders on trend lines. I want to be clear about this. If I have a trend line like this, even though I do play them sometimes, but I more so look for, you know, setting an alert on the trend line and looking for a swing fail, some sort of a test of it, grabbing liquidity just below and then reclaiming it, that sort of thing. At that point, that's more so how I like to trade trend lines. I don't like to just blindly set orders. So, you know what? I will actually take a look at ETH. Oops. So there we go. That can alert me if it does happen. Ooh, look at that. There we go. Send it. Love it. Nice little nuke. That means there's a good chance if Bitcoin starts nuking like that, my hype short, or hype long rather, will probably, oh, I might hit my second entry though. I'm still willing to take it just because it's such tight stop loss. Let me just check something here real quick. Pull up my other device here. Bear with me. Stu, bear with me. Oh yeah, basically if it goes, it doesn't have to go much more. If we go down below 39.5, I'll be stopped out. But that's fine, because if that happens, that means my Bitcoin short is ripping towards my next target. Maybe we'll get it this stream yet. Anyone else in any interesting positions? Shorts, longs, Bitcoin, altcoins? What's everyone feeling these days? Just Miana? Am I saying that correct? As I went over the last week or two, I'm not very good with names. You guys need easier names, 3-letter ones. You and your big words and small difficult words. Oh, small, yo, don't trigger people. Because I agree that we can absolutely go to 55K. I think we can actually go lower. The thing, oh god, just look how bad that weekly looks like it's turning, even from the start of this stream. Just the fact that it's retesting that swing fail level so perfectly and flipping red like that. I think the RSI, I mean, here's the thing, guys, right? Let me break down this divergence. I know I do this in almost all my streams, but in case some of you guys haven't been listening or missed those parts of my streams or anything, let's discuss this trade setup and why this is my favorite trade setup. And guys, This is I do talk about this trade setup a lot, this double top scenario. I like these trade setups more than I like Stuber Fibs. That's right, I said it. It's just that Stuber Fibs come up a lot more than these. But this is the highest success rate pattern that I have ever back tested on the 4-hour and the daily. But again, market structure is market structure. I treat it the same on all time frames. But this has a crazy high success rate. Is that exact, like I was talking about earlier, that double top with this bearish divergence. So let's explain what this means. Over here, we have overbought conditions, a lot of people would say. What we actually have is we have a bull market, and overbought means that this is the RSI, the relative strength index. We have a shit ton of strength because it's an uptrend and we are in that territory. Here we are approaching, and notice that even as we had that, we end up getting rejected at that resistance, right around 110k. We now break structure to the downside, retest that same resistance, and we have this much less strength, right? The RSI has dropped significantly. If we could not break this resistance here when we had a shit ton of buying strength, why would we break that same level that was indestructible last time? Why would we break it this time with significantly less strength? Right? That's a basically how I look at that divergence, and it's exactly why it's a very specific one. A lot of people look for any divergence. That's a very specific one. Mine need to go from overextended, either if I'm looking for shorts, going from overextended down to the 70 level, right? Here was another one, big 30% correction there. Just like to the upside, that I want it to retest that 30 level. Bullish, retesting 30, bearish, retesting 70. And the fact that we got that so perfectly with everybody FOMOing into, like, and here's the thing, you get those people who are longing billion-dollar positions right into macro resistance when there's less strength, and then blaming corruption. That's just not understanding how technical analysis works, and that's just having FOMO like any retail trader, but being a rich retail trader with way too much. I don't know how they got that much, but that's besides the point. Basically, this is just very basic price action, and it's just showing that at the same level of resistance, we have significantly less strength. The RSI even looks like it's rolling over, if anything. I do want to actually take a look at my monthly, because it was actually crossing bullishly the other day. Yeah, we still have the Wave Master trying to cross bullishly. It's actually gotten smaller, so if we pull back much further, if this candle turns red, I assume this RSI is going to drop. So right now, because guys, I know I've pointed this out in several streams, but the Wave Master, every time we've got one of those crosses in, after testing over extended conditions, it's been perfect market reversals, and we got that basically right as we started losing our support here, right? Oh, we are turning red on the monthly. Interesting. Look at that. So a lot of people would say, well, Stu, yeah, this is crossing back bullish right now, though. You're correct, but this is not printed for 18 more days. Even just look how much the market structure has changed today. A lot can happen in 18 days. And that's a big concern for me, that I really think that by the end of the month, I think this bearish cross is going to, like this bearish cross, I think this bullish cross is going to end up looking something like that, just rolling over. So it is something to watch for. Doesn't have to happen, obviously, but it is something to watch for. And if you take anything away from my stream today, just understand this. At this point, anything is possible. To me, it honestly looks like Bitcoin's starting a full-on bear market. And I know that people don't like to hear that, and I know people laugh when I say that. The chart looks to me like it's starting a full-on bear market. Look at the chart structure last bear market compared to this bear market. Overextended divergence, nice and spread out there. Get that divergence with our double top. Look at that, right into that same pocket, right? If I pull my fib like so, that same red box, we tested up into there for about 5 weeks. We're currently at about 4 or 5 weeks, have the same bearish divergence. We have that same, we have that same FOMO rally, everyone posting about how much higher we're going. And then that was bear market on. What do we have here? We have that same very quick recovery right back into resistance, same divergence, everything very similar. It does not have to happen exactly the same, but just understand that the market doesn't give a shit what we think about this. And this also doesn't mean that I'm taking a short on a 5-minute chart and expecting a bear market out of it. This is just looking at it to try and keep a level head and think, does it make sense that we have to get this parabolic run that everyone's been promised and everybody thinks is guaranteed at this point? Nothing has to happen. Just play the charts for what they are. I'm not really interested. If it breaks higher at that point, just start playing the long pullbacks, right? Just long in Stuber fibs on the way up at that point. But we don't have that structure to do that yet. So until that happens, we just have to be very careful with this. Yeah, that's something to consider, actually, is that, the longs are not as high as I would expect them to be. So there might be a little bit of fuel there for the bulls. But if that long short ratio climbs any and gets above 50 as we're trading at this resistance, yeah, I think it's going to be, I really feel like any week now we're going to see lights out. Bitcoin's going to crash. My only question from there is, will altcoins be able to get their last finale hurrah that I've been, kind of assuming that we get? Or is it going to be very short-lived? Like maybe Bitcoin dumps and then the altcoins just get a final push for a day or two. I don't know. I would kind of expect, a few weeks. But again, who knows? We're just going to have to see how each individual coin performs. Because as I mentioned at the start of this stream, previous cycles you could basically hold anything. This one, not so much the case. So I like to play each chart individually at this point. Oil just lifted off. Yeah, the old, I believe there was something about oil prices and Middle East conflict. Those two things seem to always go hand in hand. Gold is up. Nice. Like holding coins that generate revenue. Fair enough. I like to hold bags of ass. Just kidding. Be careful with meme coins. Like I said earlier, they oh, there goes the old hype. This average entry did drop significantly, but either way, that one's done. I am going to just sit on my Bitcoin shorts for now because they make me happy. Yeah, we're definitely working our way down towards my next target. Sol is at a stew bowl. I'll check out Sol. What time frame? This one? I see what you're seeing. I see what you're seeing. Yeah, I agree. Solana is at the start of a Stuber fib here. What are the Trendmaster? One thing that concerns me about it is we might see, I think we might see the 886. I'm not ready to pull the trigger quite yet. Just that this indicator has a little invalidation level right down here. I think it's very likely we see that at this point, but you're right. We are at the start. We're at the 786. One thing that concerns me about this setup is just the fact that we've obviously printed a lower buy signal, and that means I would expect a lower sell signal to come into play. Doesn't mean it has to, obviously, but that might mean even if we get that, it's still very possible that, you know, we could get something like this and even just test the first target and then get a lower sell and then, you know, carry the trend kind of a thing. But that lower buy signal scares me a little bit. Also, this is me being very picky. It's something that I don't talk about too much just because it can get confusing. But with the micro analyzing side of things, let's just go. So this would have been the lower high that broke, right? For the obvious Stuber that you mentioned, because here we had our low, lower low, lower high. The thing is, and this is, again, very, very micro analyzing, but it is what it is. We technically broke above this high with a red candle in there, so technically got a higher high, and we broke this. So even I would have personally felt better about this Stuber fib if this right here got our pullback immediately, just because there was technically a trend of higher highs and that was broken. It's not something that I've officially back tested or anything like that, but I have definitely noticed that there's a little added risk in something like that. And it's wild to think because the chart looks basically identical to how I just outlined, but it actually is slightly different. And that's exactly why I like to microanalyze things a little bit, because it can look exactly the same, but be a little bit different. So not saying that it's not a Stuber fib or anything like that. It's just got a little added risk involved between the lower buy and the possible loss of the new uptrend there. That's all. My favorite kind of Stuber setup is when you get that break and immediately come back and retest it. When it's just clean, it's obvious, there's just one higher high, it's just a very obvious pivotal point in between the two. Those are my favorites. So this one's just a little bit messy, but you're right, I do see what you're seeing. Sui, I'll check out Sui as well. Yeah, the exact same thing, right? Because we had this break, so I agree with that. However, again, it's just not perfect because it got a little bit messy up here. We continued an uptrend, but we lost that, rather than just, you know, confirming an uptrend like here. If we would have reversed straight from there, that's where it's a very clean break and straight back down to retest, rather than forming any sort of messy consolidation, messy structure, whatever. Again, that might just be me being a little bit picky. I'm just, you know, passing that on. Yeah, loads of Iraqi FUD and new COVID variants for God tier entries. Exactly, right? I mean, I was actually warning, I think it was closer to, where was it? Oh man, it was like the start of this year, where I was talking about that potential double top type of a setup on Bitcoin's weekly with that divergence, and saying that we were going to see some sort of a crazy news catalyst as we get there, some sort of FUD happening that explains that, oh, this is why it happened. Well, the real reason why it's likely going to retrace, in my opinion, is because we just have less strength at this level. And no matter what happens in the news over the next few days, we've been testing this level for 4 weeks now with less strength, and we've been rolling over. So yeah, the media is going to say this is what caused it, but really the chart structure is already there, and it's just hanging out waiting for something to spark it, in my opinion. I agree, Chaos. If we ever get dominance drop and alts flip start their move, this is the time for it to happen, in my opinion. Otherwise, lights out and it's all trap city. I agree. I think literally, as like, you know, I've been talking about being a little more bullish on alts. I really think right now is basically their time to shine. I don't think they'll do it while Bitcoin is actively dumping, like right now. However, if it starts forming some sort of stable consolidation, even just trending up a little bit, I think at that point, you know, altcoins got to make their move fairly soon. And by fairly soon, I don't mean like the next few hours, but even the next couple of weeks. I really think that just we don't want to see Bitcoin go full shit your pants mode, and because that'll spook the market entirely. But yeah, I'm kind of expecting to hit my next short target tonight. That would be lovely. Sorry, one sec. Ondo, I will check that out. Perfect bottom entry, you say? I see what you're seeing there. I think 4 hour. We got this guy, that same kind of messy structure there, but yeah, like you say, looking like support. The thing that bugs me about this is definitely one of those ones that has so many different potential ranges in play here. Like, we might actually be looking at something like this, which, to be fair, that concerns me. That one actually concerns me a little bit, just because it's already been tested and hit the first target. So at this point, is it going to hold again? I'm not sure. It very well could. This one just isn't jumping out at me in a super clean way. I agree with you that we're definitely closer to support than resistance. I wouldn't want to short this by any means. It's just got a little bit of additional risk. Let's zoom out a little bit. I could go for the real big one. So, yeah, I mean, it totally depends, right? I also feel different about spot buying versus leverage trading, because if you're leverage trading this, yeah, there's some room to potentially go to the downside. So, in my opinion, it's quite volatile, and I'd want to use some lower leverage on something like this. But yeah, I mean, it's at support. I'll give you that. Wouldn't bid yet, think lower across the board. And see, that's kind of my thing too, is at this point, if I'm expecting Bitcoin to go lower, and honestly, this is just a short target. It's not even like I'm all that interested in going long here yet. If I'm expecting Bitcoin to keep dumping, I just assume the whole market's going to be, you know, holding on for a little bit longer. Long ass. I don't even know if you can. I don't know if I'd want to play leverage on a $3 million market cap coin, to be honest. 4 hour. What's the 4 hour looking like? Having a hard time. However, again, we have the Trendmaster indicator on the 4 hour. Still, we're struggling a bit, but we still have some support here. And as well, even if we pull back, we have higher trending sell signals. We broke this structure here with this sell signal. I don't think it looks so bad yet. And guys, when I was talking about how, I use these fibs on basically anything, any time frame, any asset, whatever. AS is a perfect example. This thing had like a $1.5 million market cap or something when it was back here. And notice, look at this on the daily chart. High, higher high. This is my lowest point between the two. There's my higher low. So on this trashy meme coin, less than $2 million market cap, just look at that fib pocket holding as support, hitting both targets. So at that point, yeah, maybe it's okay to be cautious. Maybe it's not a good buy level yet. Maybe we pull back first. But again, just going to show how well that structure gets respected. That's a nice clean one where, hey, there's no weird higher highs going on. There's no new trend. It's just, hey, we broke the high and set a higher high. Instant pullback into that fib pocket. Boom, perfect entry, right? Obviously not where I bought. I bought significantly earlier. But that being said, as far as, like I said, with spot trading it and stuff, I mean, I still use that same basic chart structure, the same Stuber fib setups and that sort of shit when I'm trading those as well. ETH close to 886. Oh, sorry. I did have to, since Lord Dump You here did mention 55K, I do also want to look at that. That's what I was actually going to look at before I got sidetracked earlier. You're calling 55. I'm saying that if this is the market top, you know what I'm going to be looking for. That fib target doesn't start until about 37K. So if Bitcoin is topped here and we do enter an actual bear market, I would be eyeing up 37 down to about 27K. I don't think that whole pocket would fill, but honestly, it could go lower. But I really see no reason why we wouldn't end up hitting the Stuber fib pocket. And before anybody gets mad at me and says that that's not going to happen and that's ridiculous, understand the COVID crash respected it. This previous market cycle, notice that we found support right around the 786 there. Previous market cycle, pull from market bottom to market top. Where did we find support? Oh, right in the middle of that fib pocket there. Where did the cycle before that go from the very bottom of its existence to the first cycle top? And where did we find support? Right in that fib pocket. So you're right, it doesn't have to happen again. However, every single market cycle so far has respected that. And like I said, I don't treat different time frames differently with structure. If this was a 5-minute, nobody would question this. I know a lot of people in the chat, a lot of you in here with me right now, would say that on the 5-minute, you would be looking for longs down here just because of a Stuber fib setup. On the weekly, I bet not too many people agree with me anymore just because it's big and scary and emotional numbers. But as far as basic chart structure goes, it is what it is. It always feels like this cycle is different because, yeah, significantly bigger players are in the space, but every single cycle has had that as well. Every single cycle, there's more coins in circulation. There's more altcoins in circulation. There's bigger players in the space, exponentially larger players in the space every market cycle. And you need that to even have the market cycle act the same. You need significantly more money to make market cycles be even similar to one another. So, yeah, I think it's absolutely possible that we drop to these levels again if we start an actual bear market. I'm not saying we're going straight there from here. If it happens, I assume it would take a year and a half, but we're going to have to see. Bigger players, bigger dumps. And that's the thing too is you know, something to consider is, yeah, there's bigger players that are buying, and oh, how can you be bearish? BlackRock's buying millions of dollars on whatever day. Yeah, well, you know what? That's nothing to them. You know, that's like saying, well, I also have no problem throwing in a few bucks here and there. I don't mind dollar cost averaging into stuff on the way down either. But you have to understand that those people are going to still have those millions and millions and millions of dollars if we do get down to those levels. And if I was them, I would be wanting to help push the price down to those levels to get into them. You know, they're not called smart money, and they never made their billions by FOMOing into market cycle tops. That's not what they've done. Where are we at? Where are we at? A little more dump you going on here. If we don't hit my target soon, I'm probably just going to start taking some more profits anyways, manually. My target's basically just above 103.2k, so we'll see. Anyways, legends, I think that's about all I wanted to go over with you guys this fine evening. So hopefully you guys found this stream useful. I want to thank all of you guys for being here with me. Love doing these streams with you guys. It really helps me talk through my own emotions and kind of wrap my head around my own theories. It just makes a lot more sense to myself when I say it out loud, so I'm glad I get to do that with you guys. Also, for those of you who are watching this on my YouTube channel a little later, if you want access to the MDX ALGO indicators that I've been showing here, there's a 10% discount link in the description down below. And with that, I'm out. Stay safe, my friends. Peace.